At the family party, my brother announced, "You don't belong in this family." Mom stayed silent, clutching her glass. I forced a smile, grabbed my bag, and slipped out into the night. The next day, when the lights went out, 19 missed calls from home. I'm Emily Harper, 38 years old, and I never expected my own brother to betray me in front of everyone at a family party in Overland Park, Kansas. It was a warm summer evening, the kind where neighbors and relatives gathered in my parents' cozy suburban house to celebrate Dad's 65th birthday. I'd spent hours crafting a 3-layer vanilla cake piped with intricate buttercream swirls, a nod to my old days running a coffee shop. The living room hummed with chatterglasses, clinking kids running through the hall. I was carrying the cake from the kitchen, its sweet aroma filling the air when my brother, 5 years younger, stood up from the couch. His voice sliced through the noise like a blade. "Emily, you don't belong in this family." He set his eyes hard, not even glancing at the cake I'd poured my heart into. "We don't need you here." The words hit like a punch to the gut. I froze the cake heavy in my hands, my face burning under the weight of every gaze in the room. Mom sat at the dining table, clutching her wine glass so tight I thought it might crack, her lips pressed into a thin line, saying nothing. Dad at the head of the table mumbled something about calming down, but his voice was weak, barely audible over the sudden silence. The neighbor from next door shifted in her seat, her eyes darting between me and my brother. The couple from across the street, stiff and awkward, stared at their plates. Nobody spoke up, not a single guest. The air felt thick, suffocating, like I was drowning in their silence. My brother's words echoed in my head, each one sharper than the last. I set the cake down on the table, the buttercream smudging under my trembling fingers. I forced a smile, tight and brittle, and picked up my wineglass. The bitter taste matched the sting in my chest as I took a slow sip, buying time to steady myself. I wasn't going to let them see me break. They didn't deserve my tears. I set the glass down, grabbed my bag from the corner of the room, and walked toward the back door. Every step was deliberate, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor, the only sound in the house. I slipped out into the cool Kansas night, the door shutting softly behind me. My car was parked down the street, and I drove 10 miles to a motel off 69th Street, the neon sign flickering in the dark. My phone stayed silent in my bag. No calls, no texts, just the hum of the road. I didn't look back. All I knew was this: I was done being the one they pushed aside. They thought they could live without me. Fine. Let them try. But when the lights go out, the water stops, and the bills pile up, will they still feel so sure? I checked into the motel, the clerk barely glancing up as I handed over my card. The room was small, the air stale, but it was mine for the night. I dropped my bag on the bed, my chest tight with a mix of anger and clarity. They'd crossed a line, and I wasn't going back to being their doormat. My brother's voice, cold and final, played on repeat in my mind. Mom's silence hurt worse, her grip on that glass saying more than words ever could. Dad's weak attempt to smooth things over was just noise. They'd all made their choice, and now I was making mine. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the cracked wallpaper, my hands still shaking from the weight of what had happened. 5 years of carrying their lives on my shoulders, and this was how they repaid me. I'd sold my coffee shop, my pride and joy, to keep their house afloat. $2,000 a month wired straight from my account, and they called me a burden. My brother's words weren't just a moment of anger, they were a truth they'd all been hiding. The party was supposed to be a celebration, but it turned into a wake for the family I thought I had. I didn't sleep that night. My mind churned, piecing together how I'd ended up here alone in a motel with nothing but a bag and a broken heart. I'd given everything to keep them standing, but they didn't see me. Not anymore. Maybe they never did. The thought twisted in my chest, sharp and cold, but it also lit a fire. I wasn't going to let them define me anymore. They wanted a life without me. They'd get it. And they'd learn what that really meant when the consequences hit. My phone buzzed once, twice, as I lay on the stiff motel mattress. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. I knew it was them, already starting to feel the edges of what they'd done. 19 missed calls would come later, but for now, I let the silence of the room wrap around me. I'd spent years keeping their world together, but tonight I was done. Tomorrow, I'd start unraveling the threads I'd tied myself to their lives with. They'd feel the weight soon enough, and I'd be ready for it. I closed my eyes, the hum of the motel's air conditioner drowning out the world outside. My brother's voice still lingered, but it was fading, replaced by a resolve I hadn't felt in years. I'd built a life once before, and I could do it again. This time, it would be for me. No more carrying their burdens, no more swallowing their insults. I'd given them everything, and they threw it back in my face. Let them figure out how to stand without me. I was done being invisible. I lay there, my bag still packed, knowing this was just the beginning. They'd pushed me out, but I'd show them I didn't need them either. This isn't just my story, it's for anyone who's felt invisible. Drop your city and time in the comments. I want to see how far this reaches. If you've been pushed aside by family, you'll understand. Subscribe, hit the bell for part 2, where I cut every bill. Let's talk about standing up for yourself. I woke up in a motel room off 69th Street, the hum of a cheap air conditioner cutting through the silence. My phone sat face down on the nightstand, buzzing with texts I refused to read. I stared at the ceiling, my mind drifting back to 5 years ago when I sold my coffee shop to save their house. It wasn't just a business, it was my heart built from scratch, with early mornings grinding beans and late nights balancing books. Brides would come in glowing, asking for custom lattes for their big day. I loved every second, even when my hands were stained with espresso. That shop, Harper's Brew, was my pride. I'd saved for years to open it, pouring every dollar into a cozy space with wooden tables and chalkboard menus. Then Dad called one night, his voice heavy. Their house, the one I grew up in, was sinking under debt. Medical bills from Mom's heart surgery, a second mortgage, they were drowning. The roof leaked, the pipes groaned, and they couldn't keep up. I didn't hesitate. I sold the shop for $150,000, enough to clear their debts, fix the roof, and keep the lights on. I moved back into my childhood bedroom thinking it was temporary, just until they got back on their feet. But temporary stretched into 5 years. I wired $2,000 a month from my account: electricity, water, internet, property taxes, even their streaming subscriptions. I took a job at a local nursery, arranging plants for half the pay I'd earned at my shop, just to keep cash flowing. Dad would nod a quiet thanks. Mom hugged me, her arms warm but fleeting. My brother, though, he changed. Tyler, who used to be my shadow, started treating me like I was in the way. Growing up, Tyler was my best friend. He'd trail behind me, his sneakers scuffing the pavement, begging to help me set up coffee stands for school fundraisers. "You're the coolest, Emily," he'd say, his eyes wide, grinning as we sneaked into the backyard to watch fireflies, whispering about his dreams of being a graphic designer. I taught him how to drive, covered for him when he stayed out too late at parties. We were a team. But when I moved back, that Tyler was gone. He'd roll his eyes when I entered the kitchen, mutter about me taking up space. Once he snapped at me for leaving a mug on the counter, saying I was a guest who'd overstayed. I brushed it off, thinking he was stressed, his freelance design gigs barely paid, and he was always chasing clients online. But the jabs kept coming, each one sharper. He'd blast music to drown out my voice when I tried to talk leave notes about chores I hadn't done. Last month, he told Mom loud enough for me to hear that I was freeloading, as if I wasn't the one keeping the house running. I tried to stay out of his way. I'd wake up at dawn, grab coffee at a diner before anyone stirred, walk the trails around Overland Park to give them space. Most nights, I ate dinner alone in my room, scrolling through old photos of Harper's Brew, missing the smell of fresh coffee. Mom and Dad didn't notice the tension. Dad spent his days in the garage fixing neighbors' lawnmowers for extra cash. Mom was busy with her book club, chatting about novels with the neighbor from next door. They leaned on my money but never asked how I was holding up. Tyler's coldness cut the deepest. The kid who used to beg for my advice now acted like I was an intruder. I'd catch him glaring when I paid the electric bill as if my help was an insult. 2 weeks ago, he left a note on the fridge. "Stop acting like you own this place." I didn't respond, just kept wiring the money, hoping he'd come around. But lying in that motel bed, I saw it clearly. I'd given up my independence, my dream to keep their lives intact. And they didn't care. My savings were nearly gone. The nursery job barely covered my own expenses, yet I was still pouring $2,000 a month into a house that didn't want me. The realization hit hard, like waking up from a long sleep. I'd been blind, thinking my sacrifices would earn their respect. Tyler's attitude wasn't just stress, it was resentment. He didn't see my help as love, he saw it as control. Mom and Dad, with their nods and hugs, were complicit, letting him treat me like I was nothing. I sat up, my chest tight but my mind sharp. I grabbed my laptop from my bag, the screen lighting up the dim room. I needed to see exactly how much I'd been carrying for them. Logging into my bank account, I scrolled through years of payments: electricity $300, water $100, internet $80, insurance $400, repairs, subscriptions, fees. It added up fast, draining the life I'd built. I closed the laptop, my hand steady now. An idea was forming, not out of anger but clarity. I wasn't going to keep enabling them. They'd taken my sacrifices for granted, and I was done. Tyler thought I didn't belong. Fine. I'd let them see what life was like without me. I lay back on the bed, the air conditioner's hum fading into the background. My phone buzzed again, but I ignored it. I wasn't ready to hear their excuses. Tomorrow, I'd head to Paul and Amber's house, my old friends who'd been there when I sold the shop. They'd help me figure out what came next. I thought back to the early days at Harper's Brew, when Tyler would sit at the counter sketching logos on napkins, asking for my feedback. That memory felt like a lie, now a ghost of a bond we'd lost. I'd spent years trying to hold on to that version of him, but he wasn't that kid anymore. None of them were the family I'd fought for. The weight of that truth settled in, heavy but freeing. I closed my eyes, ready to let go of the life I'd been clinging to for them. The motel room felt smaller as the night wore on, but my resolve grew stronger. I wasn't just walking away from their house, I was walking away from their expectations. They'd built their lives on my sacrifices, and I'd let them. No more. Tomorrow, I'd start cutting the ties that bound me to their world. They'd feel the consequences soon enough, and I'd be ready to face whatever came next. I wasn't sure what that would look like, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was choosing myself. I checked out of the motel by noon, my bag rattling in the trunk as I drove to Paul and Amber's house in a quiet Overland Park cul-de-sac. They'd been my lifeline since I sold the shop, always ready with coffee and a laugh. Their bungalow was a haven, a world away from the stale motel air. Paul opened the door before I could knock, his face creased with worry. "Emily, what happened?" he asked, pulling me inside. Amber was in the kitchen, setting out sandwiches, her eyes soft but searching. I sank into a chair at their dining table, the weight of the past night heavy in my chest. I didn't mention the cake or the wine, just the sting of my brother's words. How he'd stood up in front of everyone, his voice cold, saying I didn't belong. How Mom sat there, her silence louder than any shout, and Dad barely tried to intervene. "They think they're better off without me," I told Paul, my voice steady despite the ache. And no one stopped him. Amber reached across the table, squeezing my hand. Paul leaned back, his jaw tight, like he was piecing together a puzzle he'd seen before. "You know," Paul said after a moment, "sometimes people don't value what you do until it's gone. They need to feel the consequences to understand." His words hit like a spark. I'd been carrying their lives for years, and they'd taken it for granted. Amber nodded, pouring me a coffee. "Emily, what do they even do without your money?" she asked. The question landed harder than I expected. I'd never thought about it that way, not really. They'd built their world on my sacrifices, and I'd let them, thinking it was my duty. Sitting there with Paul and Amber looking at me like I deserved better, the truth became clear. My brother, Mom, Dad, they didn't see me as family, just a safety net. I'd given up my dream to keep their house running, and they'd pushed me out. Paul's words about consequences echoed in my mind. They wanted a life without me. They'd get it. I opened my laptop, the screen glowing in the dim kitchen light. My fingers moved before I could second-guess myself pulling up my bank account. Rows of automatic payments stared back at me. Electricity, $300 a month; water, $100; internet, $80; home insurance, $400; small repairs, streaming subscriptions, random fees. $2,000 a month drained from the savings I'd built pouring coffee and smiling through late nights. Paul glanced over, his nod subtle but firm, like he knew what was coming. Amber stayed quiet, her expression calm but resolute. My heart raced, but my hands were steady as I clicked into the payment settings. Electricity canceled. Water canceled. Internet gone. Insurance terminated. One by one, I cut every thread tying me to that house. Each click felt like shedding a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. I wasn't angry anymore, just clearer than I'd been in years. They'd made their choice, and now I was making mine. I closed the laptop, the screen going dark. Paul clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing," he said. Amber offered their guest room, saying I could stay as long as I needed. I thanked them, my voice quieter but solid. For the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on my own ground. They'd pushed me out, but I wasn't running anymore. I'd given them everything: my business, my savings, my time, and they'd thrown it back in my face. Now they'd see what life looked like without me. My phone buzzed in my bag, a faint vibration I ignored. I wasn't ready for their voices, their excuses. I needed this clarity to hold because I knew the storm was coming. Paul poured another coffee, and we sat in silence for a moment, the weight of my decision settling in. I'd been their backbone for so long, and now I was pulling away. It wasn't about punishment, it was about survival. I'd spent years keeping their world together, but I'd lost myself in the process. Amber broke the silence, her voice gentle. "You've been carrying them too long, Emily. It's time to carry yourself." Her words sank in, solidifying the resolve I'd found in that motel room. I thought about the house I'd saved, the one I'd poured my life into. The electricity that kept their lights on, the water for their showers, the internet for Tyler's freelance gigs. All of it gone with a few clicks. I didn't feel guilt, just a strange relief, like I'd finally set down a load I'd carried too far. My brother's face flashed in my mind, not the kid who'd sketched logos, but the man who'd pushed me away. He'd learn soon enough what his words cost. I stayed at Paul and Amber's that night, their guest room, a small but welcome shelter. The walls were lined with photos of their kids, their travels, a life they'd built together. It reminded me of what I'd lost, not just the shop, but the chance to build something for myself. I'd given it all to a family that didn't see me, but now I was taking it back. My phone buzzed again, more insistent, but I let it sit. They'd feel the consequences soon, and I'd be ready for whatever came next. I lay in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, the quiet of their house, a stark contrast to the motel's hum. My mind was clear, but my chest still ached, not from anger, but from the weight of what I'd done. Cutting those payments wasn't just about money, it was about cutting myself free. I'd spent years trying to hold on to a family that didn't want me. Now I was letting go. Tomorrow they'd start to feel it, and I'd be here standing my ground, ready for the fallout. 3 days later, I was sipping coffee at Paul and Amber's kitchen table when my phone lit up with Tyler's name. I let it ring, my stomach twisting as I braced for what was coming. When I finally answered, his voice was sharp-edged with panic. "Emily, what did you do? The internet's out. I can't submit my designs. Mom's freaking out about shut-off notices for electricity and water. Turn it all back on now." No greeting, no apology, just demands, like I was still their unpaid fixer. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my tone even. "You said I didn't belong, Tyler. This is what that looks like." He didn't miss a beat. "You're overreacting as usual. Just flip it back on and stop being dramatic." His words stung, but I wasn't surprised. He had a knack for twisting things, making me the problem. I could hear Mom in the background, her voice shaky, probably worrying about the fridge going dark. "It's not my job to keep your life running," I said. "You're 33. Figure it out." There was a pause, then a bitter laugh. "You're so selfish, Emily. This is why no one wants you around." He hung up. My hands didn't shake, but my chest burned. Amber glanced over from the counter, raising an eyebrow. "He's got some nerve," she said. Paul folded his newspaper, chuckling low. "Give it a few days, they'll feel it." I nodded, but Mom's voice lingered, unsteady, tugging at me. She hadn't defended me at the party, but she was still my mom. Was I punishing her too? I pushed the thought aside. They'd let Tyler speak for them. Later that afternoon, my phone rang again. Mom's name flashed on the screen. Her voice was soft, pleading. "Emily, sweetheart, please. The house is falling apart. Tyler can't work without Wi-Fi, and Dad's repair orders are stuck. Can't you turn it back on? We're family." I closed my eyes, picturing her in the living room, probably wringing her hands like always when she was nervous. "Mom," I said, steady but firm. "Tyler said you'd be better off without me. You didn't disagree. I'm giving you what he wanted." There was a long silence. "He didn't mean it," she whispered. "You know how he gets. Please come home." I didn't answer right away. I thought of the years I'd spent tiptoeing around their house, wiring money, swallowing Tyler's insults, hoping for a shred of gratitude. "I'm not coming back," I said. "Not until Tyler owns what he said. You and Dad let him say it. You're all responsible." I hung up, my heart racing but my mind clear. Amber, who'd overheard, gave a small nod. "You're stronger than I'd be," she said. I didn't feel strong, just tired but focused. Tyler's call had been a jab, Mom's a plea, but neither changed the truth. They'd taken me for granted and I was done. That evening, Tyler called again, his voice louder, angrier. "You think this is a game, Emily? The neighbors are noticing." Susan came over, acting all concerned, but she's just nosy. "You're embarrassing us." I almost laughed. Embarrassing them. "After everything you embarrassed yourself," I said. "You wanted me gone. Now I'm gone. Handle your own bills." He exploded, calling me jealous, saying I'd always resented his freedom. I didn't bother listening. I ended the call and blocked his number. Paul walked in, catching the tail end, and gave a thumbs up. "About time," he said. I set the phone down, the weight of blocking Tyler settling in. It wasn't just a number, it was a line I'd drawn. Mom's plea stuck with me, her voice shaky, but she'd made her choice that night, sitting silent. They all had. The next morning, Mom left a voicemail. Her voice quieter, almost desperate. "Emily, we can't keep up. The water bill's due, and Tyler's trying to borrow from Susan. Please just talk to us." I didn't call back. I wasn't ready for more excuses, more pleas that dodged the truth. Tyler had drawn the line, and Mom and Dad had let him. Now they were scrambling, and I wasn't going to swoop in. I stayed at Paul and Amber's, helping with dishes, chatting about their garden. Their home felt like shelter, a place where I wasn't invisible. But I knew the storm wasn't over. Tyler wouldn't let this go, and Mom's calls would keep coming. I braced myself for what was next, knowing I'd made the right choice no matter how heavy it felt. They'd wanted a life without me, and I was giving it to them. But how long would it take for them to realize what they'd lost? I didn't know, but I wasn't going to wait around to find out. I had my own life to rebuild, and I was just getting started. I sipped my coffee, staring out Paul and Amber's window at the quiet cul-de-sac. The neighbors across the street were out, probably whispering about my family's mess. I didn't care. I'd spent too long worrying about their world, their comfort. Now it was about me. Tyler's demands, Mom's pleas. They were noise, not solutions. They'd have to face the consequences without me stepping in. I was done being their safety net. The next few weeks would show them what that meant, and I'd be ready for whatever came next. 2 weeks later, a text from Susan, the neighbor next door, popped up on my phone. "Everything okay at your folks' place?" "Looks rough." I didn't reply, but I had to see it for myself. I borrowed Paul's car and drove by the old neighborhood not to visit, but to pick up a package I'd redirected to a nearby post office. As I turned onto their street, I saw the couple from across the street standing on their lawn heads, close, whispering. They stopped when they spotted my car, one of them waving awkwardly. I didn't wave back. Susan was out too, watering her garden, her eyes flicking toward my parents' house. The lawn was overgrown weeds choking the grass, the mailbox stuffed with envelopes spilling out. It was a mess, a far cry from the neat suburban home I'd kept running. I kept driving the image burning into my mind. My family's world was unraveling, and the neighborhood was watching. I didn't feel guilt, just a strange mix of sadness and resolve. They'd wanted me gone, and now they were seeing what that looked like. Back at Paul and Amber's, I was sorting through their old recipe books when the doorbell rang. Paul let Mom in. She stood in the doorway, clutching her purse like a shield, her face drawn, no trace of her usual book club cheer. "Emily, we need to talk," she said, her voice low but urgent. I stayed seated, gesturing to the couch. "Sit, Mom," I said, keeping my tone neutral. She hesitated, then perched on the edge, her eyes darting around like she was afraid to settle. "The bank's threatening to foreclose," she said, her words rushing out. "Tyler's working nights, but it's not enough. Your dad can't get repair orders without Wi-Fi. We're falling apart, Emily." Her hands twisted the purse strap, and for a moment I saw the woman who'd taught me to bake, not the one who'd stayed silent at the party. "I'm sorry you're struggling," I said, choosing my words carefully, but Tyler said I didn't belong. "He needs to fix this." Her eyes widened. "He's your brother," she pleaded. "He's trying, but it's hard. Can't you help just until we're back on our feet?" I leaned forward, my voice steady. "Mom, I paid for that house for years. Bills, repairs, everything. Tyler pushed me out and you let him. I'm done carrying his mistakes." Her face crumpled, but she didn't argue. "Your dad doesn't know what to do," she said softly. "He's worried." I wasn't surprised. Dad had always stayed on the sidelines, tinkering in his garage while the family frayed. "Then he can talk to Tyler," I said. "He started this." Mom stood, her shoulders sagging. "I thought family meant more to you," she said, then left without another word. Amber, who'd stayed quiet, squeezed my arm. "You did the right thing," she said. I nodded, but Mom's words lingered heavy like a stone. She hadn't defended me that night, but her plea tugged at old ties. I shook it off. They'd let Tyler draw the line, and I wasn't crossing it. I went back to the recipe books, focusing on the present, on the life I was trying to rebuild. But the image of that unkempt lawn, the stuffed mailbox, stayed with me, a reminder of what I'd walked away from. Later that week, Amber mentioned she'd heard from a mutual friend that Tyler had lost a big freelance contract. Without internet, he couldn't deliver designs for a startup he'd been pitching for months. The client moved on, and he was scrambling. I pictured him stressed, hunched over a laptop that wouldn't connect, his pride bruised. Part of me ached. He was still my brother. But then I remembered his coldness, his words at the party, unapologetic and sharp. He'd chosen this, not me. I didn't reach out. I had my own path to focus on. The neighborhood gossip was picking up. Susan had texted again, saying the couple across the street had mentioned Dad's unpaid repair invoices at a block party. My family was becoming the talk of the street, their perfect suburban image cracking. I didn't care about their reputation. I cared about moving forward. I'd started picking up extra shifts at the nursery, saving what I could. My savings were thin, but they were mine, not tied to a house that didn't want me. I wasn't going back, no matter how many pleas came my way. I knew the pressure was building. Tyler's lost contract was just the start, and Mom's visit wouldn't be the last. They were running out of time, and I wasn't going to bail them out. I'd spent too long being their safety net, and now I was building my own. Paul and Amber's house felt like a temporary home, a place to breathe while I figured out my next steps. But I wasn't naive. The storm was far from over, and I'd need to stay strong for what was coming. I sat at their dining table, staring at my phone, the screen dark now. No more calls since I'd blocked Tyler, but I knew Mom would try again. I wasn't ready to hear her voice, her excuses. I needed to hold on to this clarity, this sense of purpose. They'd made their choices, and I'd made mine. The next few weeks would test them, and I'd be watching from a distance, building a life where I wasn't invisible. I was done carrying their weight. Tyler's freelance gigs started falling apart without internet, or so I heard from Amber, who'd caught wind through a mutual friend. I didn't ask for details, I was too busy rebuilding my own life. Tyler had taken a night shift at a local supermarket, stocking shelves under fluorescent lights, a far cry from his designer dreams. I could imagine him pushing a cart of canned goods, his jaw tight, pride bruised. Dad wasn't faring much better. His repair business stalled without Wi-Fi to get orders from neighbors. Their world was crumbling, and I wasn't stepping in. The gossip was spreading faster now. Eric and Danielle, the couple across the street, had posted about my parents' troubles on a neighborhood Facebook group, according to Amber. The post was vague but pointed something about hard times and an overgrown lawn. It was the kind of thing that turned heads in Overland Park, where neat yards were a point of pride. Susan had mentioned it too, her texts more frequent, laced with fake concern. I didn't respond. Their whispers didn't matter to me anymore. I was focused on my job at the nursery, arranging plants, saving every dollar. My shifts at the nursery were long but grounding. I'd spend hours potting ferns, my hands in dirt, feeling like I was planting something for myself again. The pay wasn't great, but it was mine, not wired to a house that didn't want me. I'd started sketching ideas for a new coffee shop. Nothing concrete, just dreams on paper. It felt good to think about my future, not theirs. Tyler's struggles, Dad's stalled repairs, the neighborhood's chatter. They were background noise. I wasn't their fixer anymore, and I wasn't going back. Amber kept me updated, not because I asked, but because she knew I'd hear it eventually. Tyler had lost another client, a big one, after missing a deadline. Without internet, he couldn't keep up with the demands of freelance design. He was working double shifts at the supermarket now, barely sleeping, according to her friend. Dad was borrowing tools from neighbors, trying to pick up cash jobs, but no one trusted his work without online reviews. Mom was quieter, staying out of her book club, probably embarrassed by the gossip. I didn't feel satisfaction, just a quiet resolve. They'd built their lives on my money, my sacrifices, and now they were facing the consequences. I thought about Tyler, the kid who'd sketched logos at my shop's counter, his dreams big and bright. That version of him was gone, replaced by someone who saw me as a burden. I didn't hate him, but I didn't owe him either. Mom's silence at the party, Dad's weak words, they'd all chosen their side. I was choosing mine now. One evening, I drove by the house again, not planning to stop. The for sale sign was up. The paint chipped the lawn worse than before. It looked abandoned, a shell of the home I'd fought to save. I didn't feel pain, just a strange detachment. They were losing everything, and I was building something new. I'd saved enough for a deposit on a small condo, a place to start over. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I kept driving, leaving the house and its memories behind. Back at Paul and Amber's, I focused on the present. I helped Amber with her garden, chatted with Paul about his new business ideas. Their home was a reminder that support didn't have to come with strings. I was grateful for them, for the space they gave me to breathe. My phone stayed quiet now. No more voicemails from Mom, no texts from Susan. I'd blocked Tyler, and the others seemed to be giving up. They were feeling the weight, and I was letting them carry it. The neighborhood gossip had turned into a full-blown story. Amber showed me a screenshot of the Facebook group post now, with comments speculating about my family's fall from grace. It was petty, but it showed how fast things had unraveled. Tyler's supermarket job was a running joke, his designer image shattered. I didn't care about their judgment, I cared about moving forward. My nursery job was steady, and my sketches were piling up, each one a step towards something new. I wasn't invisible anymore, not to myself. I knew the worst was still coming for them. The bank wouldn't wait forever, and their rental apartment was probably next. But I wasn't going to step in. I'd spent years holding their world together, and they'd pushed me out. Now I was building my own piece by piece. The clarity I'd found that first night in the motel was still there, stronger now. They'd learn their lesson, or they wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my burden anymore. I was ready for whatever came next, and I wasn't looking back. 3 months after I cut the payments, the house I'd fought to save was gone. Susan texted me a photo of the for sale sign, the lawn still choked with weeds. I didn't reply. I heard through Amber that my family had sold the place, moving to a cramped one-bedroom rental on the edge of Overland Park, far from the neighborhood they'd called home for decades. The couple across the street had told everyone at a block party, their whispers turning my family's fall into local lore. I didn't go see them. I'd made my choice. I was building a new life. With what was left of my savings, I bought a modest one-bedroom condo in a quiet corner of Overland Park, near a park with walking trails. The walls were bare at first, but I started pinning up sketches of coffee shop designs, menus, layouts, dreams I hadn't touched since selling Harper's Brew. I took a job as a consultant for a local florist, helping with wedding arrangements and teaching bouquet workshops. It wasn't my old shop, but it felt like a step toward reclaiming myself. Every paycheck went into my own account, not someone else's bills. For the first time in years, I slept without the weight of their expectations pressing down. My days were simple: work at the nursery, consult for the florist, sketch at night. I'd walk the trails near my condo, the Kansas air warm and familiar, clearing my head. My phone stayed quiet, no more voicemails from Mom, no texts from Susan. I'd blocked Tyler, and the others seemed to have given up. Their silence was a relief, a sign they were finally carrying their own weight. Amber kept me in the loop, though I didn't ask. Tyler was still at the supermarket working nights, his freelance dreams buried under the reality of long shifts. Dad's repair gigs had dried up completely. Neighbors didn't trust someone who couldn't pay his own bills. Mom stayed out of sight, avoiding her book club, probably too embarrassed to face the gossip. Their new rental was a far cry from the house I'd kept afloat, a small place with thin walls and no yard. They were starting over, and I wasn't part of it. I didn't feel triumph, just a steady calm. They'd built their lives on my sacrifices, and I'd let them, thinking it was what family did. But family doesn't push you out, doesn't let one voice speak for all. Tyler's words, Mom's silence, Dad's passivity, they'd shown me who they were. I didn't owe them my life anymore. I focused on my work, my sketches, my condo. Each step forward was mine, not tied to their needs. I was building something new, something that belonged to me. One evening, I sat at my kitchen counter sketching a new coffee shop logo, the kind Tyler used to doodle at my old shop. The memory didn't hurt anymore, it was just a fact, like the weather. I'd given them everything, and they'd thrown it away. Now they were living the life they'd chosen, and I was living mine. I didn't check on them, didn't ask Amber for updates. I didn't need to. Their world was no longer my responsibility, and that truth felt like freedom. The neighborhood gossip had faded, replaced by new stories, new dramas. Susan stopped texting, and the couple across the street moved on to other topics. My family's fall was old news now, a cautionary tale whispered at barbecues. I didn't care. I was too busy planting roots, literal ones at the nursery, figurative ones in my condo. My florist job was picking up, with more clients booking consultations. I'd started saving for a small business loan, dreaming of a new shop, maybe a cafe this time. I walked by the old house one last time, not out of nostalgia, but because it was on my way to a client meeting. The for sale sign was gone, the windows dark, the lawn still a mess. It wasn't my home anymore, hadn't been for years. I kept walking, my steps light, my mind clear. They'd lost the house, but I'd gained myself. I didn't need their approval, their gratitude. I needed my own. And for the first time, I had it. Back at my condo, I pinned another sketch to the wall, a layout for a cozy cafe with big windows. It wasn't Harper's Brew, but it was a start. Paul and Amber checked in, bringing takeout or inviting me to their garden parties. Their support reminded me that family could be chosen, not just inherited. I was learning to stand alone, and it felt right. My phone stayed silent, and I let it. They'd made their bed, and I was done tucking them in. I sat in my new condo, a small one-bedroom in a quiet overland park corner, sipping coffee at my own counter. My phone was silent. No more calls, no texts. I'd blocked Mom and Dad's numbers just as I'd done with Tyler's. The quiet wasn't empty. It was peaceful, a space I'd carved for myself. I'd spent years holding their world together only to be pushed out. Now I was building my own, and it felt like home. My walls were covered with sketches, cafe layouts, flower arrangements, pieces of a future I was shaping. I'd stopped checking for updates about them. No more texts from Susan, no whispers from Amber about their struggles. I didn't need to know. They'd lost the house, moved to a rental, and faced the consequences of their choices. I didn't feel joy or regret, just calm. My life was mine now. My florist consulting job was growing, with clients booking me for weddings and events. I was saving for a new cafe, sketching logos at night, each one a step toward a dream I'd thought was lost. Looking back, I saw the lesson carved into every moment of this mess. Family isn't just blood, it's respect, mutual support, and seeing each other's sacrifices. I'd given everything to keep their world turning, but they didn't see me. Tyler's words, Mom's silence, Dad's passivity, they showed me who they were. I didn't hate them, but I didn't owe them either. Self-reliance became my foundation, the key to any bond worth keeping. Without it, love is just a word, empty and brittle. I'd learned that the hard way. This isn't about holding grudges, it's about survival. I'd poured my life into their house, my savings, my dreams, and they called me a burden. Cutting them off wasn't punishment, it was freedom. I blocked their numbers because I deserved a life where I wasn't invisible. They're rebuilding now in their own way, and I wish them no harm, but I'm done carrying their weight. My condo, my job, my sketches, they're mine, built from my own hands, not tied to their expectations. To anyone who's ever felt unseen by the people you'd give everything for, this is for you. Don't let your sacrifices break you. Set boundaries before you lose yourself, because no one else will do it for you. I waited too long thinking family meant carrying their load forever. It doesn't. It means mutual respect, and if that's missing, it's okay to walk away. I did, and I'm stronger for it. My life isn't perfect, but it's mine, and that's enough. Paul and Amber still check in, bringing takeout or inviting me to their garden parties. Their support showed me that family can be chosen, built on care, not obligation. My florist job keeps me busy, and my cafe plans are taking shape, maybe a small place with big windows serving coffee like I used to. I walk the trails near my condo, the Kansas air clearing my mind. I don't look back. They made their choices, and I made mine. I'm not invisible anymore, not to myself. The clarity I found that first night in the motel has stayed with me sharper now. I'd spent years trying to hold on to a family that didn't want me, but I let go. Blocking their numbers was the final step, a line I drew for my own peace. They've learned their lesson, or they haven't. It's not my burden anymore. I'm building a life where I matter, where my work, my dreams, my choices are enough. And that's a victory I'll carry forever. Thank you for listening to my story, for giving me your time and attention. It means more than I can say. I know some of you have felt this, carrying the weight for people who don't see you, only to be pushed aside. I see you, and I'm grateful you've followed me to the end. If this resonates, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Drop a comment below. Share how you found your strength, what pushed you to set boundaries. Let's keep this conversation going. Your stories matter just like mine. Tell me where you're watching from, what time it is, and how you stood up for yourself. This isn't just about me, it's about all of us learning to value ourselves, no matter how hard it gets. Subscribe, hit the bell, and join this community. We're stronger together, and I can't wait to hear your voice in the comments. Thank you for being here.